thank you both for making this happen. Fred, thanks for doing it. Really appreciate it.
I'm happy.
Just want to make sure
really
I said that to you guys.
I'm actually honored that you thought enough of me to do this. So, okay?
I don't know how we could
Let's
do
go
a history of paintball without
So,
getting
that I appreciate very much.
So we'll start out with like a simple question. Like I'll ask a bunch of questions, but just like the first one, we'll just ask how you got into paintball and like what was the, what drew you to paintball? What was the first?
You lead and I'll follow.
All right. So I'd like to start out with that one because it's something that I want to get on film from everybody, but it's also an easy one to get started with.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So we are almost ready.
I was going to ask if my hair is okay, but I don't have any. You're the man.
Yeah, so tell us about, by the way, I'm not going to be in the video asking the questions.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so we're going to have a narrator. I'm going to be doing some of the stuff like you're doing today, but we have a narrator, but we're not going to ask questions, so we'll be talking about a topic and it'll cut to you, and it'll cut to Jerry Braun, and that's kind of the method. So, how'd you get started in paintball?
Very, very strange way. I had a partner, we had a construction company, his name was Rick Williams. And his birthday came up, so we couldn't figure out what are we going to get this guy for his birthday. So there was a place in town called Honest John's Gun Shop. So we went there and seen the little Splatmaster. You push the button in. And so we bought him that, and then we bought him a case of paintballs, which at that time were 30 cents a ball. So not very cheap. So we gave it to him, and then he sat there in his target practicing, and we're all watching. So I had to try it too, and we had like 30 guys working for us. So finally I said, well, I'm going to get one of these, Rick. So I went and got one, and him and I started playing against each other in his yard, and he goes, well, you know what? He says, my wife doesn't like us shooting this around here. So we found an abandoned, I'll just say a big lot. So we went up there and started playing, and next thing we knew, everybody in the crew had went and bought one of those also. So we showed up one Sunday just to have a good time, and there was like 30 guys. So we decided, you know what? This isn't going to work. So that's when we went and we started our field battle action games.
Also, if I don't respond, it's only because I don't want to be heard on the film, but I love hearing these stories. So battle action games is a field you started, and so how long did you do that for?
Well, we started the field, I'm going to say probably in '85, and we did that for actually a couple years. That's where Constant Pursuit actually came out of. And we actually had a couple other teams from Vacaville that would come and practice there. And it started out just to get that place just for our crew and myself, to go have a good time on the weekends. Well, next thing we know, people just started showing up because they heard of it. And that's how it actually evolved into battle action games. It started out as just a bunch of us wanting to play together, but as people showed up, we didn't want to turn them away. We thought, we're out here having a good time, let's let them join in. And next thing you know, it just snowballed.
So how do you make the leap from, just a guy having fun on the weekends playing paintball to, captain of a team that really would be one of the top teams in the world?
Well, that was kind of a strange thing. We were sitting at a table one time, and I heard about a tournament back east, Jim Lively's tournament, the Masters, and back in Tennessee. So we were all sitting there, and we had a bunch of guys that we've been playing with, and this was still a 15-man tournament. So we're talking, I go, wow, I'd really like to do something like that. Well, next thing you know, everybody that's around the table, they go, oh, I'd like to go with you, I'd go with you, So I says, well, let's go ahead and put a team together and go do it. And I says, let's take and have a vote to see who would be captain. Well, obviously I came up to be captain. So then next thing was the name. They go, well, what should we call it? Well, there were some weird names that came out. I got to tell you, some of them were pretty funny. And we were sitting there, and finally I says, you know what? I says, somebody said something to me, and I said, yeah, I says, I'm always after you. I says, I'm Constant Pursuit. And my partner goes, that's it, Freddie, Constant Pursuit. And that's what started it. And we all joined together, we put out our own money, and we headed back to Tennessee and just had a terrific time, all pumped in the woods. It's just great.
Back in the early days of Constant Pursuit, you had a lot of great teams in this area to play against. Who were some of those teams that you played against?
Oh, millions of them. To start with the Ironmen. Us and the Ironmen, we're all friends. And I'll say it right off the top, the Ironmen were a great bunch of guys, but we love bumping heads with them. That's just how it was. You had the Black Diamonds. There was just a bunch of good teams. We had even teams like the Bushwhackers and stuff from LA would come up and play here, and we'd go down to Satcon Village and play down there with them too. So it all kind of intertwined together. And the more you got into it, the more people you met, and then the more teams. Because when we first started, you didn't even know there was another team out there. You know, it just kind of evolved into that, and it was a great experience for myself. So.
Did you get to play much against Navarone? What was that like?
I played a couple times against him, yeah. Andy was a good friend of mine. He put out a marker that he wanted me to shoot, and I wouldn't shoot it because it just had problems all the time, so I didn't do it. But Navarone was a good bunch of guys. We played against them a couple times. One time, I don't know if I should even tell you this, but one time we played against them in a field down in LA, and they were pushing in on constant pursuit. And I heard Andy out there yelling, blue right, and I just started yelling, check that, blue left. Well, anyhow, make a long story short, he's out there screaming, but his team went left, and we just annihilated half of them. And I think that was probably the only time we beat Navarone, because Navarone was a screaming team. And they've been together for quite a while, and they played very hard. But it was fun. So.
Same thing with the Ironmen. What was it like playing against or with the Ironmen?
The Ironmen, they were cool. You know, there's a lot of different guys. When I started with the Ironmen, Rick Beard was actually the captain of the Ironmen. So that goes way back. And then Bob Long ended up taking it over one time when we were in Tennessee. But I had a good time with all those guys. Those guys were, like I say, they were stand-up guys. And Mike Beard, which is Rick Beard's son, just a terrific kid. I enjoyed him. Rick Sandias. There was a lot of guys on it that when you're on the field, you're playing to win. But when you're off the field, that's when you could tell the personality of somebody. If you come off the field, win, lose, or draw, and you're still friends, that's the type of person you want to hang out with. And that's the type of person I hung out with. You know, Rick Beard and Mike Beard and all those guys, they were terrific. But they played very hard.
I'm actually meeting Mike later today.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, over in Sacramento.
Yeah, he's a good kid.
Yes.
Still not as good looking as I am, but he's good.
Well, most people are. Duh.
I love it.
What was paintball like in NorCal back in the early days when you started playing?
It was pretty good. After we got started and we went to Tennessee, that was kind of opened the door for us out here, believe it or not, because then people that were having small tournaments out here would start getting a hold of us to go play those tournaments. And we would play around here, and we got to practice against, you know, the Ironmen and all these other guys, so that made all of our teams a lot better. And then we did a lot of tournaments up in Oregon. I used to like to travel up to Oregon and play up there. There were some very good owners of fields up there that were very good. There was one that wasn't so good, but I won't even mention his name. But the majority of them were terrific, and they had a very good time. And I went up there and I did some charities up there. I did one with Tanya Harding and some other stuff, so yeah, it was pretty good.
I'll take a quick second, and the cameras will go about 20 minutes before you need to shut them down for a minute to...
No problem.
Yeah, because they can only process so much at a time.
Is it going like you want it so far?
Great. It's I love to hear the stories, and tell as long as you want or as short as you want. We can edit.
You don't have enough film.
Oh yeah, no, we actually do. That box has about 2 days worth of stuff in it. So I'm gonna turn it back on.
I actually brought some of my sponsors' jackets and some of my old markers and stuff if you'd wanted to see.
I would love to see that. Yeah,
So,
take some pictures of that. Yeah.
Okay.
So you talk about Oregon and playing in California. Did you find any differences between California or West Coast play and East Coast play?
Yeah, actually, the fields actually were pretty much the same. You know, the woods were the woods. Had a great time in the woods, but the attitude was different back there than it is here. I ended up making all kinds of friends back there. Jerry Braun owned Paintball News. I used to love to do his tournament. His father would always be out there. We'd pull in all the time, and his father was just a great old guy, but he was always in the parking lot. Anybody that pulled in there, first thing he goes, you can't park there, you can't park there. So anyhow, every time I pull up, he'd go, hey, you can't park there, and you go, Freddy, he'd come over, he'd go, you can park over here. So I had all kinds of friends back there, and like I say, a lot of good memories from back there.
What did you think of like the difference in the fields, like Jerry's field and the fields here? Obviously, terrain's different and things. Was it unique to play those fields, or was it just paintball?
It was just different, that's all. You know, you wanted to always get, whenever you played back there, just like in any tournament, you wanted to get there a couple days early, and that's what I always did. And then I'd walk the fields and check it out, because, you know, they usually had, 5, 6, 7 different fields when you'd go to a tournament back there. But the fields were, the woods were woods. They were pretty good. There was actually less poison out there than there was out here, so believe it or not.
Did not know that.
Yeah, there's poison ivy there.
So you became really the face of paintball for several years and hosted a lot of big things. How did that come about? Like, you went from being a walk-on player, to a team player, captain, to national level team, to spokesperson for paintball.
Well, actually, what really started it was I would do a lot of charity, especially the Ronald McDonald House. And people would call me up, and I'd go fly to LA and do a charity for them, and just different some money. Well, Randy Camilla, who was the editor for Paintball, or Action Pursuit Games back then, and he came up to me one time and he goes, "Didn't I see you at this thing over here and this over here for the Ronald McDonald House and yada yada?" And I says, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, who's your sponsor?" And I go, "Well, I have no sponsor." He goes, "Well, who pays for you to go travel to go do these benefits for these people?" And I go, "Nobody pays me. I do it for myself, I said, "Just because I want to, just to meet the people and stuff like that." And he goes, he gives me his card and he goes, "I'd like to talk to you next week." And I go, "Okay." I gave him my number. I said, "You can call me anytime." Well, he calls me next week and he goes, "I'd like you to fly down to Burbank." He said, "I want to give you a cover shot on EPG." And I got to tell you, that's what kind of started it right there. I went down, I did the cover shot. People would call me up if I couldn't go do their charity events. I would send them things, because by now sponsors started getting a hold of me and wanted. So when the sponsors would give me things to play with, I always distributed them among the people. That's partially what really started making me more popular. Is you could come up and talk to me anytime you wanted, and I would try to help anybody that I could, and I did. So.
You did. You did a lot of events, Amateur Open and lively stuff, and the television stuff for ESPN. So I want to go through a couple of those. What was it like to do that? You did that ESPN show. That was really a fun. New York City set up in the middle of ESPN. What was that like?
Yeah, that was actually it was very cool. It took 9 months to set that up. There's a producer at MGM Disney called Joel Kostovich. He owns Barnstorm Productions down there in Florida. And he'd contacted me to do a video. He says, maybe we could put a video out there showing kids and people that don't play paintball exactly what it would be like to get into the sport and the safety aspects and everything. I says, "Hey," I said, "I'd love to do it." So I went down and I did the video with him, which sold 1 million copies. But anyhow, then he calls me back up and he goes, "I'd like to try to put this on TV." He goes, "It's going to be a hard sell, but let's get a hold of ESPN and see what we can do." So we contacted a gentleman at ESPN called Ron Simeo, and he was the head of the production at that time. And we gave him the idea and everything, and he was a little kind of cold on it. And we told him, if we shoot this at MGM Disney, would you be interested? And he goes, "Well," "I'd be interested," but he says, "I don't think we can get any sponsors, the normal sponsors on ESPN, that would go ahead and back it." So he says, what I would do, he says, "if you can get Disney involved and some other players," and he says, it takes $60,000. He goes, "I'll give you a 1-hour show one time." And then he goes, "I own the rights to it for 1 year, and then it will revert back to you and Joel Kostovich." So we go, "Okay, we'll see what we can do." Well, then it was putting the money together. So I contacted a few people, and Dan Colby from Air America, which is one of my best friends. Anyhow, he put up $20,000. Todd Nessler from Vents Goggles put up $20,000, and Dennis Tippman, which is another terrific person, put up $20,000. So now we got to $60,000. So we get back a hold of ESPN, and ESPN goes, "Well, we want to make sure that Disney is on board with this." Well, we get a hold of Disney, they go, "Well, we want to make sure ESPN's on board with this." So, it was one of them red tape things. So we finally got that hashed out. So then it boiled down to clothes. So I got a hold of Adidas and Reebok, and both of them said the same thing. They go, "Well, we're going to check up, and you know, see if it's for real. And if it's for real, we'll go ahead and we'll do something for you. Well, Adidas called me the next day, and then Reebok called me about 8 hours later. But I'd already made the deal with Adidas, and they just sent us tons and tons of stuff. So we got back to Ron Simeo, showed him that we had ESPN, that we had Disney, showed him that we had Adidas, and we had our $60,000. And he goes, okay, he says, you got it for 1 hour. So then we got our contract with Disney down there, and then Joel goes, well, who do you want to bring in? And I said, well, I'm going to bring in all my friends, because I said, if you bring in your enemies, you're not going to have a good show, period. So I got all the people that actually helped me become Fred Schultz through that time, and some of my Constant Pursuit players. And then the other team I made up of manufacturers. Bill Garner from Smart Parts. I had Jerry Brown was one of the head refs out there. I had Jimmy Anderson was one of the guys. Tom Kay owns Air Guns Designs at the time. Dennis Tippman Jr. played on the other team. So it was pretty good. Rainey Boucher from Paintball News, which I used to write for them. So I brought all those guys down there, and obviously we did the show. I didn't get to see it. I was flying home when it aired. I was flying home from the Amateur Open, and I was on the plane talking to my wife, which was watching this show actually, and she told me, she goes, yeah, she goes, it looked really good. You did a good job. And I go, I can't wait to see it. So anyhow, I finally land, and my cell phone was turned off all the time. I was talking to my wife on the phone in the airplane. So I got a call from ESPN, from Ron Simeo. And Ron Simeo told me, he goes, yeah, Fred, he goes, you're my new star. He goes, you guys had the highest rating of any show for the entire weekend. Well, it was only supposed to air the one time, and ESPN owned the rights to it. They aired it 24 times that year before it came back to us. So our whole goal, my whole goal, was to reach people in a positive way about the sport. And to make people want to go out and play the sport, which would help, you know, it helps all the manufacturers, and it helped the sport. So that's how that went down. Anyhow, a few months after that, I'm downstairs watching football. My daughter comes running down, and she's like 10 years old, 12 years old. She's like, Dad, MTV's on the phone, MTV's on the phone. And I go, yeah, that's fine, baby. She goes, no, get up there and answer the phone. I go, sweetie, I'll get to him, don't worry. So anyhow, make a long story short, it was Clay Newbell from Road Rules. And he goes, we're going to do the new season of Road Rules, and we would like to do a paintball episode. And I go, okay. And he goes, well, we want you to be in it. And I go, okay. And he goes, well, can it be set up, or how do we go about it? And I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I says, I'll do the show for you if you let my people come in and ref it and take care of it, and my sponsors put all their equipment out there on view, I will go ahead and do it. And he goes, it's a deal. I go, okay. I says, send that to me in writing. I says, and then it's the deal. And he goes, okay, you got it. So which he did. So then, now I'm under the wire now. So I call up Brass Eagle, which was one of my sponsors, and got a hold of J.J. Brookshire, and told J.J. about it. And you know, he goes, oh, Freddie, he says, anything you need, we'll do it. And then I had my shoes, Jerry Riley. He's down in Hayward, California. He had just bought the patent for Digger shoes. It was a very cool shoe. It had like a round cleat on it, so you could pivot and everything, really cool. So I got a hold of him, and I said, Jerry, I said, would you like to be in this? I says, one of the refs, and he helped me. I need a bunch of barrels and stuff set up, and some money to go ahead and get this place on Mare Island. He goes, you got it. Whatever you need, Freddie, it's yours. So I contact Mare Island, and they had this big round building there. And I thought this would be the perfect thing. So anyhow, we leased the building. I brought, Jerry Riley brought a bunch of barrels and the banners from my sponsors and everything. And then Brass Eagle brought up all the stuff. I had all the clothes made for both teams for the kids. And next thing you know, they showed up. We shot it, and it was an absolute hit. They aired that thing something like 158 times that year, and that was the first Road Rules of that year, and it was just terrific. So,
great story.
and plus, you know, and again, we reached more people by doing so, you know, and a different age group probably too. So.
Amateur Open was a huge East Coast event. I think you would basically say it was a huge international event held in the East Coast every year. You were the MC several times, I believe.
Yeah, actually for the first, I believe, 4 years. And then they went to a younger guy. So, it is what it is,
What did you think of that event?
Oh, I think the event was terrific. Deborah and her husband, they just did a great job. They always treated me with the utmost respect. And when I went to the first one, I basically went there just, Air America was going to be there and some of my other sponsors, but I went just to hang out with the kids, that was kind of a big deal for me. And then Deborah comes up to me and she goes, "Fred, we'd like to have a Miss Paintball contest." And I go, "Well, that sounds cool," but I said, "If you're looking for a judge," I said, "count me out." I said, "I'm not going to have nothing to do with that." And she goes, No. She goes, "We want you to MC it, and if you would you wear your camel tuxedo?" Because I was one of the muffs. And I says, "Yeah." I said, "We give it a try." I says, "I'll give it my best. If it goes good, it goes good. If it doesn't go good," I says, "That's it." And she goes, "You got it." Well, it went over just terrific. I got up there, I had a great time. We had the crowd rocking. We had like 9 just beautiful girls that came up there to be Miss Paintball, and every one of them were deserving. But obviously there was only one winner. But yeah, it went out real good. I had a great time with the kids that were out there. I had a great time with the teams. It was just terrific. I did it for 4 years doing that. I'd actually get excited when it was time to go do it because I just liked the people and I liked hanging out there. So.
Of all the events you emceed or hosted, what were the favorite ones of yours? Or were there even?
Well, I can't say that there was a favorite. I can say I had a good time. We did a world record-breaking game, Clio. Clio.
Skirmish.
Yeah, skirmish. That's absolutely correct. So we did one there, and there was like 2,600 people, and it was just terrific. Tom Kay and we just had the best time. I don't even know how to explain it. But anyhow, I went and I did a target shooting thing. I didn't want to do the target shooting, and everybody's going, "Freddie, you got to do it." Well, Tom Kay comes up to me and goes, "Freddie, you see, you're shooting an automatic. You got to do it." And I go, But I said, "These are all kids shooting. Come on, let them do it." So anyhow, I got up there and I just wrapped them off. Well, I hit it 18 out of 20 times, okay? So I don't think nothing of it. So they're doing a show afterwards. They had a paintball eating contest. They had a wet t-shirt. They just had some strange stuff, but it was just all in good taste. It was fun because there was a lot of kids at this big game. So anyhow, I'm up on they brought in a flatbed semi, and that was our stage. So we were up there, and I can't remember her name, I think her name was Karen, but she worked for Cleo and them. And she came up and she helped me MC, and her and I just went back and forth. She was terrific. It almost sounded like it was staged, but it was all live. Well, then it came down to, they go, "Well, the winner of the target shoot and the winner of the new Airgun Designs Automag is Fred Schultz." Well, I'm standing up there in front of all these people, and I'm just embarrassed now. I'm going, "Oh my God, I don't want to win this thing." So anyhow, they brought it up and they gave it to me, and I got on the mic. I told everybody, I said, "Well, first of all," I said, "I really appreciate this." I said, "It's probably lucky I hit it 18 times. I said, I had my eyes closed, and I got everybody's out there laughing. And there's this kid down in front with his father, and he's probably about 10 years old, and he's down there just clapping away, And I says, I look down, and I go, "Hey, you." I says, "Come on up here." And his dad looks at me, and he looks at the kid, and he points to the kid, and I go, yeah, the kid. And the kid comes up, man, now he's white as a ghost, They bring him up on stage, and I ask him his name, and I asked him, I said, "Do you have a good time with your dad here today?" And he goes, "Oh, this is the best time I've ever had, ever." He said, he was just so pumped, it was unreal. And I go, "Well, you know what?" I said, "I'm going to make this time even better for you, son." I said, "This is your automatic." And I handed it to him. And the kid, he couldn't even talk. He was just stunned, And the dad was out there. The dad was stunned too. So then after everything was off, I got off stage and I was heading back to they rented me a house to stay in. So I got my wife and we were headed back there, and the dad came up to me and he goes, he says, "I got to tell you something." He says, "What you did for my son today, my son will remember as long as he lives." And he goes, "I want to thank you." And I go, "No." I says, "I thank you for bringing him to show him what fun this could be." I says, "So we both made up."
I have that whole thing on film, so I'm really glad you talked about it.
Yeah, pretty cool,
Yeah,
huh?
I do. I have like an hour.
I look like Johnny Cash up there.
I have like an hour of video from that day. It was.
Do you really?
Yeah, it was
Oh
really
man,
awesome.
you know what? I got it somewhere on tape, but I don't know where. I'd
Yeah.
love to see it
Yeah,
sometime.
you will. Yeah.
Yeah, but I gave the kid the gun.
Yeah,
You remember that?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Skirmishes were actually where I played my first game, so that field holds a special place for me.
Yeah, that place was, I mean, there was so many people. I mean, and there was 2 teams, right? Well, 2 teams of 1,000 something, you know, and it was unreal. You get out there, and here'd be one part of a team, and you'd be fighting them, and another part of the other team would be back there, and it was just all intertwined. So, and Tom Kay and I were out there, and we were laying down there, and I had my wife with me, and there was about 50 guys come out of the woods, and there's this big clearing, and we're on the other side, and there's only the 3 of us. And Tom goes, uh-oh, what are we gonna do now, Freddy? I go, Tom, I don't know what you're doing, but I said, I'm getting out of here. We turned and we hauled, man. I had my wife, I'm trying to keep my wife ahead of me so she wouldn't get it. And, I just had a terrific time.
Your wife played in that with you?
Yes, she did.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my sponsors actually, I didn't bring her marker or anything, but yeah, Tom Kay made her a special mag, had her name on it. Tim Schloss sent her the special camo. Everything that I wore, my wife had. Exact same thing.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. I didn't
Yeah,
know she
it was-
traveled with you to the events.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, she's a good woman. We're still together, so
Good for you, man.
yeah.
Good for you. Mine too. We're together for
Right on.
23 years, probably longer for you, but
Yeah, 40 some. You know, go closer to 50 now. It's been quite a while.
wow.
Since 72, so I don't know.
Good for you. That's awesome. That's rare. Yeah. One of the blessings of life, right?
She definitely was. So, and I put up with all my travels and everything like that. I took her, you know, when I would go to Europe, my sponsors were terrific because they would buy her a ticket and they'd buy my daughter a ticket if she wanted, and they would take care of all my stuff over there. But then she got to the point where it was just really, really hard for her to travel. And then what kind of started burning her out just a little bit was we did a tournament in Texas, and we were playing this last game to get into the finals. And I stepped in an armadillo hole. Okay, well, I broke my leg in 3 places. So the guys helped me off the field. We go back into my staging area, which was about as big as this room right here. And my wife comes over to me, and about 250 people packed in there to see how I was and pushed her right straight out. So anyhow, I told them, I said, I'm going to finish this game, this tournament. So the EMs are there and they go, no, we got to take your boot off. I go, no, you ain't going to take my boot off. So we duct taped my leg. I went out and played the 3 final games. And actually, we would have won that tournament. We lost because I had a deaf player on my team. And just a terrific kid, but he was deaf, you know. It wasn't his fault, it just happens. So we had a yellow ribbon that was tied on his arm, and all the refs knew that he could not hear. Well, he was playing and he was close to a sideline. And we were beating the other team. And the ref told him, hey, you're awful close to the sideline, get it in a little bit more. Well, obviously he didn't respond because he could not hear it. The ref went and pulled him. So he was the guy keeping everybody from swinging around that side. So after they pulled him, there was only one other guy. They took him out and swung around and did it. So, but anyhow, I think we got second. So they helped me off the field and they cut my boot off. My leg just exploded. It just swelled up. But that was kind of the turning point for my wife. And then I just got back from Europe and I had to go back to Europe again. And she went to France with me for a tournament, an amateur tournament over there. Tom Kay, it was Tom Kay, myself, and a couple guys from England, a couple guys from France, and a guy from Germany. It was an amateur tournament, but they allowed 1 pro to play in it, which would have been me. So we went over and we played in that. That was an outstanding time, but it just rained so hard. But we won that tournament. And Tom Kay from Your Gun Designs, he went bananas. And after it was over, I sat down and they had a big line to sign autographs. Well, Tom Kay's standing over there, and I says, guys, really, I'm a nobody. I said, that guy makes these markers you're playing with. I said, that's the autograph you want. And so anyhow, Tom come over and he sat down. He had like a 180-degree smile. You know, I got all of it on tape too. So that was a real good time over there. But after that, my wife just kind of, I would do the travels, and she really didn't care about going as much anymore. She'd stay at home. So.
You traveled a lot. How many times do you think you've been in Europe?
Oh, geez, I don't know. I was going 3-4 times a year. So quite a bit. They, like I say, that amateur tournament in France, and I can't say that was the best time, because the best time was the Mayhem tournaments. But I had a lot of fun at that amateur tournament in France, because I was with, Tom Kay and just a bunch of guys from different countries that wanted to get together and play. So.
Yeah, talk about the Mayhem Masters events.
The Mayhem, it was great. To start with, when I first went over there, I was one of the head refs for it. So I didn't play over there. And then we had a special team that Tim Schloss from Tiger Stripe had put together called the Muffs. Okay, well, it was made up of Gary from Orlando. I can't remember his last name now, but him and I were really the only two pros. Then you had Tim Schloss, and Paul Wilson, Terry Glenn. Just some terrific nice guys, but not killer paintball players. But they put the Muffs in there, and we were supposed to go in there, I think, kind of as a joke. Well, we ended up Gary and I were just smoking. I don't know why. I think God was watching me that time. But we were just playing up a storm. And we ended up fourth in the tournament. But we played guys like the Predators, and we beat the Turks, and just all kinds of good teams that were out there. And that was the only time I think I really played in that and had a real good time. The rest of the time I roughed in it. So.
Excuse me. Talk about Paul Wilson a little bit.
Paul Wilson, one of the nicest guys I've ever known. Matter of fact, they had a trophy called the Paul Wilson Award, and it was for the most outstanding player in person in the sport, and I won that the first year it came out. So that really meant a lot to me. The first time I went over there, I landed at Gatwick, and Paul Wilson picked me up. It was a white knuckle ride all the way back to his house. But anyhow, Paul Wilson had picked me up, and they'd set up two guys to be my bodyguards because they were afraid of my popularity that someone would jump me over there. And that was Big John, and I can't remember the other guy's name, but they were two terrific guys, but they would not let me out of this. I couldn't even go into the bathroom without these guys standing there, So that was one thing Paul did I really didn't need. But he took me around and he introduced me to all kinds of people, and then we went to Lord Harry. I don't know if you've seen any of the Muff pictures, but Lord Harry has a real castle over there. He's a true lord with a real castle. And I got pictures of our dinner we had at his place. He had pictures hanging on his wall that were the size of my house, just huge. And as a matter of fact, we had one of the tournaments was there too, and we went there and we reffed that tournament. And but before the tournament, they took all the Americans that were over there, Jim Lively and Schloss and all those guys, and we played against all the Europeans, and it was a gas. It was like 5-1. They outnumbered us, but we just had a great time, and it went right down to me and Schloss were out there. We called it 2 men and one gun, because my marker went down, he had his, and we were back to back, and he'd shoot over there. I'd go, Tim, I need it, and he'd hand it to me, and I'd shoot over here. He'd go, Freddy, I need it, and I'd hand it back. It was just a riot.
1 second, sorry. That's great. I got you on this one, so we're good there. Like I said, sometimes these cameras just need a break.
No problem.
They take a lot of data, so.
No problem. You're
doing great. Loving these stories. They are bringing back memories for me, and I'm sure you, I hope.
Yeah, they do. Like I say, I had a lot of good memories. A lot of good memories. Most of them was meeting kids, meeting the people out there. Not just kids, but just the players. Just had a terrific time doing that.
Yeah, and you were great at it, and you were in your element. It felt always like so genuine,
Well, I was, that's kind of, when I write my stories, I wrote for Paintball News for Rainy Boucher. And when I write my stories, people would come up to me and tell me, man, it was like you were talking to me. And I said, well, that's the only way I really know how to do it, is that way. But I always tried to make people that would normally not have a chance to get their 15 minutes of fame, I'd try to give it to them. Matter of fact, Keith Kissel, one time, I'll tell you a good story. I get a call from a lady, and she says, I can't remember her name, but she says, my son is very, very sick, and his birthday is coming up next week, and his biggest wish was to meet you. And I said, well, I said, that's not a big deal. I should be happy to do that. And she goes, yeah. I says, is he really sick? And she goes, yes, actually. I don't know if he's passed away or not. Do you know? Keith doesn't know either. And so anyhow, make a long story short, I says, can I have his doctor's name? And she goes, oh, you certainly can, because I just wanted to make sure that I just wasn't getting taken by somebody. So I call up his doctor, and his doctor goes, yeah, he has this disease, and he's not doing real well. So I called his mother back, and I told her, I says, when's his birthday? And she goes, next Wednesday. And I think this was like on a Tuesday or something like that. And I says, can you have him come down here to the Vallejo field to meet me? And she goes, well, he doesn't drive, but he has a friend. If it's okay if his friend comes along. I go, absolutely. I said, you can all come along. She goes, well, I can't come there. But she goes, he would just love it. And I go, well, do me a favor. I says, tell him to be here about 10 o'clock in the morning. And she goes, I sure will. So after I hung up the phone with her, I called Tim Schloss and told Tim what was going on. And he goes, Freddy, I said, I'd like a set of camos exactly like I wear. And he goes, no problem. So he sent them out. I called up Airgun Designs and I said, Tommy, I says, I gave him the story with the kid. I says, I'd like to get an automag exactly like I shoot for this kid. He goes, no problem. Called up Air America, no problem. Bent's goggles, no problem. Digger shoes, no problem. So anyhow, next Wednesday shows up, and we got a trailer out there. And actually, Channel 7 was there too. Channel 7 had come out there. And the kid shows up, and he walks up. He's just white as a ghost, and he's not saying anything. And I go, hi, I'm Fred Schultz. And he's like, yeah, I know who you are. And I go, how you doing? He goes, I'm doing good. I said, did you come to play paintball with me today? He goes, oh, he says, I'd love to play paintball, but he goes, I don't have anything. And I go, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I said, I want you to go in that trailer over there. And I says, you change your clothes, and you come back out here. And he goes, but I don't have anything to change it. So you just go in the trailer. So anyhow, he goes in the trailer, and he comes back out, and he looked like a mini-me. I mean, he had everything that I had right there, you know. And he comes up, and he had like tears in his eyes. And it almost broke all of us up. It was bad. So anyhow, so we went and we played the games. We played about 4 games because I didn't want to push it because of his condition. But he had a terrific time. And Jerry Braun gave us the cover of the magazine. Him and I are on the cover of Paintball Sport. And so anyhow, I sent him back home. And his mom called me up that night. I could barely understand her. She was crying so much. And she was just so grateful. And I told her I was grateful that she would give me the opportunity to do something like that. Because there was a lot of paintball players out there that they could have called. And they called me. And I told her, I said, your son's always in my prayers. And I says, I hope he had a terrific time. And I hope he remembers it forever. So that was one of my best ones.
I wish you would come back to paintball. We need more of that. I mean, this game needs more people.
That was real good for me, too. And for everybody that was concerned. The point being is, all my sponsors jumped in to help this kid with no questions asked. No, can you pay for this? No, can you do this for me if I do this for you? Just, that's what I'm talking about, terrific people. That's to me, is what helped build a sport. Period.
Talk about Tom K a little bit. You mentioned him a few times.
Tom K?
Yeah.
Tom K's a heck of a guy. I play. He had a team called Swarm that he sponsored way back in the day. Chip Kurtz and Sandman and all those guys. So anyhow, we go to a tournament in Nashville. Well, everybody else had the single shots, right? He came out with the automatic. These guys were smoking us. I mean, I felt like I was in a paintball blizzard because they were just ripping on us. So anyhow, make a long story short, they won the tournament. So he comes up to me afterwards and he goes, what'd you think of that? And I go, that's tremendous, very, very, very nice marker. And he goes, I want you to shoot it. I go, you want me to shoot it? And he goes, I want you to shoot it. He goes, I'll send you a bunch of them. And I go, well, I says, we'll see, because I don't know if you knew Ross Alexander back then. Ross Alexander, he was a good guy, but he came out with a marker, and he was real hot for me to shoot it. And I tried to help him to start with, and I was telling kids this is a good marker to get, but it kept falling apart. And so finally I went to Ross, told Ross, I said, Ross, I can't deal with this anymore. I says, everybody that's had a problem with this, I said, I wish you would take care of them and just forget about it, and I can't be sponsored by you anymore. So that's when I went with Tom K. And Ross did. Ross stood by everything that he'd sold and made everything right. And Ross Alexander, he was a very good guy.
The World Cup, the big event, big show. What were your memories of that?
Had a lot of good times at the World Cup, actually. One time I remember we had all our sponsors from Brass Eagle were there, including the CEO. He was there. A real nice guy, but pure business. That's how it was. And never smiled, I mean, to get him to smile was pretty hard. And then we had a kid that was playing out there, not on my team, but he got sunstroke real bad. So I says, well, quick, let's lay him down. I said, start cooling him off. So we lay him down, and I got a wet rag and started cooling him off a little bit. And all of a sudden, these other guys bring over and start putting bags of ice on him. I go, well, we don't want to take him from sunstroke to frostbite, guys. I says, you want to bring him down easy. And we brought him down, and after we did, the kid sat up, and he was in good shape and felt okay, and he left. And the CEO came over to me, and he goes, well, that was pretty amazing, And I was thinking, it was pretty amazing, but you could have did it too, And you didn't. You just stood back over there and watched it. So I thought that was a good time for everybody, because the way everybody swooped in to help this kid like that. I did a big game. I did a lot of big games. They would fly me in. I can't tell you how much fun I had these big games. They were better than tournaments for me, period. But we did one in South Carolina, and I get there, and a few things happened there. First of all, the people were just terrific, absolutely terrific. And we split up into teams, and what I would do is I'd play on one team for 2 games, and then I'd switch over to the other other team for 2 games. So that was always an equal type of a thing. And we had a kid that was an epileptic, and he went down, and people were screaming that we needed to cool him off. So we get in there, and first thing I did was I held his tongue so he wouldn't swallow his tongue. And there was a creek, and this creek was probably 200 yards away. All the players from both teams lined up, took their hoppers and stuff like that, paintball things, and filled them with water and passed it along, and we cooled this kid down and got him back off the field. So then, that was on a Saturday, so then I was going to play the next game, and it starts pouring out. Well, there's this team there, and they're all dressed in black, and the guy comes up to me and he goes, sir, he goes, we would like to be your personal guard. I'm like, okay, sure, that's what you want, that's fine by me, no problem. And this field, let me tell you, this field was really cool. You get out and it had a big hill going down. You could actually walk into the hill. They had it hollowed out for bunkers that you could walk in and walk around in. Well, the big game, they gave you a chart, and it was scenarios. You had to get down pilots and all kinds of stuff. And they gave you a chart, and all the chart had was just the schematics on it. You had to figure out where everything was. Well, these guys, there was 21 of them, and they go, we want to be your guard. And I go, no problem. So we get out there, and it just starts pouring out. And I'm inside this bunker, and I'm looking out through this hole of the bunker, and it's just raining cats and dogs. So I feel bad. These guys are all out there around me. So I go out there, and I tell them, I go, hey guys, why don't you guys come inside and wait? I said, you can watch me just as much in here as out there. And this kid looked at me and goes, no sir. He says, we're not going to let anything happen to you at all. And they stayed out in that pouring rain. And I can't tell you how much respect I had for those guys. So I went back in real quick, looked at the chart where to go, and went back out in the rain with them, because I wasn't going to sit in there and drive with them out there. Well, we went, and we got the down pilot, and we got all kinds of things. A kid comes up, I signed my name this big on the hood of his truck. And that's the type of things that's the fun I had, was the big games like that. Tim Schloss had big games. Chip Kurtz and Sandman in Illinois, they had big games. North Carolina, anybody that would call me, they had a decent field. I would go to. Nikki in Racine, Wisconsin was one that I'd go to an awful lot and had a lot of fun. When I go to that one, Tom Kay and all those guys, Dan Colby and all those guys would show up and come out and play with me. So big games, met a lot of great people. No stress, no $20,000 on the line, nothing but fun.
It's funny, that was gonna be a question I was gonna ask you about that. You were probably one of the earliest, if not the earliest, of the pro players that would play in these big games.
Yeah, I probably was. And Nikki, I think, is the first one that called me up, Nikki from Racine, Wisconsin. And she called me up and she goes, yeah, we'd like to have you come to our big game. She goes, we get about 200 people. She goes, I think you'd really enjoy it. And I said, well, let me think on it and see if I can work on my schedule. I said, I'll probably do it for you. Well, then Chip Kurtz called me up from Swarm. And Chip was a friend of mine. He goes, come on, Freddy, you got to do this for her. She's great, and she gets about 200 people. Dave from the paintball place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, he came out. So I said, all right. I said, I'm going to go do it. Well, I come pulling up, and next thing I know, they had almost 500 people. And she was just ecstatic. They almost ran out of paint. Matter of fact, they did run out of paint on one of Schloss's game. R.P. Shearer came out there and had so many people show up, they ran out of paint. I signed autographs at that place for 45 minutes. I sat the line. It was just, I'm telling these people, guys, my signature doesn't mean anything, but I guess to them it did. And, to me, they just never really understood the fun and the charge they gave me. So I was happy to maybe give it back to them, but I think I had more fun than they did. So.
Yeah, let's talk about the NPPL, the early NPPL days.
The NPPL. Obviously, all the pro teams, we were playing the tournaments, stuff like that, and we thought, well, we should get some kind of organization going. Maybe not so much a union, but something that all the teams and the players could abide by, a set of rules and the reffing and so on and so forth. So I get a call from Steve Davison, a good friend of mine, great guy. He goes, he threw the idea out to me. And I says, yeah, that sounds good. I said, go ahead and contact the teams, let me know. And I says, we'll set it up. Well, he calls me back a while later and he goes, yeah, he said, I'm calling them. He says, but they're not real responsive. He said, well, could you make a few calls for me? And I go, I'd be happy to, Steve, no problem. So I made some calls, told everybody, I says, if we ever want the sport to grow, let's start making it more professional. We call ourselves professionals, but what is a professional? If you're in a professional organization, then you're a professional. I said, let's start there and get a set of rules that everybody knows when they go to this tournament, this isn't going to be different, this isn't going to be different, it's all going to be the same. And so, let's meet in Chicago. I said, it's kind of a centralized area, guys aren't flying across the U.S. And he goes, that'll work. So we met there for 2 days. And we're sitting there, and after we hashed out all the rules and everything else, then we started talking about, well, what are we going to call this thing? Well, Randy Boucher and I were sitting there, and all kinds of things came up. And I go, how about the National Professional Paintball League? And Randy Boucher looks at me and goes, nipple? I go, it sounds good to me. And I got to tell you, that's what stuck there. So we elected us. They wanted me to be president. Didn't want nothing to do with it. Let somebody else handle that part. I said I'd be their spokesman. So I was a spokesman for it. And just like I told everybody, and everybody agreed that was there, this now is what we're going to abide by. And when people talk to us about, are we pros? Yes, we're the Professional Paintball League. And that's what we'll go by from now on. And it seemed to work for a long time. After I got out of paintball, it was still going, but I guess it just kind of faded out.
Yeah, it got bought out and switched and fights and rehashed out and something else.
Yeah, it's a shame though. When stuff like that happens, to me, it's good for a couple of guys, but it's not good for the vast amount of people, nor the sport itself. So, you're not going to get any parent going to let their kid come and play when they see a bunch of guys out there fighting over this and fighting over that. They're going to say, nah, I really don't want you guys involved in this. So.
What was that first meeting like? That NPPL meeting that you sat in Chicago for 2 days?
It was interesting. I'll use that word because it's the most polite word I could think of. We all got around the table, and you had like 25, 24 teams there, and everybody had a different idea of what should be what. So it was a matter, that's why it took 2 days. It wasn't something that we just dove into and go, this, and we're all going home an hour later. And everybody has a different idea of what they want. So we had to sit down and hash out a set of rules. We wanted a set of rules that were going to be fair to everybody and the same at every tournament you went to. You didn't have to get a rule book when you went there. You already had the NPPL rule book. Go by it. So that was the hard part, and everybody compromised. It actually all worked out. It was a little rough to start with. And people butted heads, but that was something that you had to expect when you first got there. Everybody had a different idea how things should be. But then in the closing minutes, everybody agreed, everybody was friends, and it was on, just like that. And everybody was pretty happy about it. It was pretty cool.
And the league essentially replaced the Lively series, right? Which had...
You know, I'm not going to say it replaced the Lively series, because Jim, you know, he kind of had his own thing all the time. And that's one guy. I just talked to Jim a couple of weeks ago, actually. He's a good guy. Got himself a coffee plantation, and he says that his wife Linda calls it his expensive hobby. But I've always supported Jim Lively. Jim Lively's been my friend, so it was never the intent ever for NPPL to take over anybody's tournament that they had going. Amateur Open, you know, just Lively stuff, anybody's stuff. We never had that intention. The NPPL, there was certain tournaments that we went to, like Jerry Brown's in New York and so on and so forth, that were already the tournaments that we played at. So those are the ones that got involved with the circuit. But that did not mean that the teams could not go to any other tournament. And I'd always emphasize that I thought Jim Lively threw a great bash there. Him and Sam Caldwell, you know, Sam has passed away since then. They just always treated everybody, not just me, they treated everybody with respect and a lot of tolerance, because when you take and you put on an event like that, you're going to get people that aren't happy, you know, especially guys that lose. You know, they're always going to say, this guy did this, the ref did this. You know, it's just a kind of a standard thing, and, you know, some of them you can't blame, some of them it probably happened, but the majority it was just griping. And Jim handled that always with nothing but pure class. And that's why I always supported him and supported his tournaments and enjoyed going to them too.
Yeah, I think it's probably fair to say that you know, the NSG ran their tournament series early in the 80s, and Jim actually worked and helped them run their events. Mm-hmm. And then it sort of morphed into Jim and Sam, and I thought they were the right leaders at the right time for an industry that needed something, and they were professional and did a great job with their series. Would you?
That's absolutely correct, yep. As a matter of fact, our first tournament was Pump there that we went to, 15-man too. So, yeah, it was an absolutely terrific time. When that tournament would be coming up, I would actually get excited. Not so much, I knew I was going to have a good time playing paintball, but I knew who was going to be there. It was going to be the same people that came year after year, and I just loved being with them. So that's what would be exciting for me. I'd go there, and there they'd be. You know, everybody was happy again, you know, and everybody was talking paintball, and just, it was extremely good for the sport. And, you know, Jim, you can't say enough about Jim. He, you know, he went to bat and put on a good show all the time, period.
And less people, Jim is kind of the face of the Lively series, less people know about Sam. What would you say about Sam?
I say Sam was a great guy. Sam was, I'll say it was Jim's Robin, like Batman and Robin. Sam took care of a lot of the behind stuff. Jim was the face. Jim would set everything up. Jim would make sure that all the monetary things were taken care of, all the sponsors and stuff were taken care of. Sam would take care of all the logistics. You know, I mean, when you would go to these tournaments, like I had a golf cart all the time. There was like 30 golf carts. And just the logistics of it, the behind the scenes stuff, getting the vendors set up certain places, just everything to do with that part of it is what Sam jumped in and did. Sam was a very good guy. He was always friendly to me. He was business, period. He was business, and Jim could not have asked for a better right-hand man than Sam Caldwell.
Yeah, I think they deserve a lot of credit for
Absolutely, and I know he's very well missed, not just by Jim, but like myself and anybody that had dealings with him through that time.
Yeah. Did you know Bob McGuire at all?
Of course I knew Bob McGuire.
Yeah, you did, of course you did.
Yeah, I did a show for Bob McGuire,
that's
actually,
right.
yeah.
I have some of those
Yeah.
series. Tell me about Bob in that series.
Bob was a great guy. Bob came up to me and he goes, yeah, he said, I'd like to put you on television. And I go, is that right? And he goes, yeah. He said, I go, well, what do you want? And he goes, well, he says, anything you want to do. And I said, I'm a good soft shoe. And he goes, no, Freddy, paintball. And I said, all right, yeah, no problem. So him and I hit it off right off the bat. We were joking around. And I did a show for him. He was at a couple tournaments. He actually held a tournament, and this was really, this was incredible. He held a tournament, and he had where he would fill the CO2 canisters, right? He had a special thing that he would fill the CO2. Well, he filled my marker. I go out and I'm playing, and I'm shooting, and I'm seeing flames come out of the end of my gun. Actual flames. So I go back up, and I after the game was over, I go up and I go, hey, Bob, I said, I'm shooting flames out of my gun, buddy. I said, I don't know what you got in your CO2, but something's wrong. He goes, no, Freddy. I go, Bob, shoot this thing, buddy. He shoots it, and flames come out, and he goes, oh my God. So anyhow, they had to regroup and get all new CO2 for it. But back to Bob as a person, he was a good person. Him and I, we hit it off right from the start. He filmed me a few different times. We did the one show, and then he filmed me a few different times after that. Whenever I would show up at a tournament, he'd come right over to me right away and sit and talk to me. He wanted to be one of the first ones to do it. And I just thought he was a terrific guy. I understand his son or something is taking over or doing something. Not really sure about that, but that was the gossip out there that he has. And you know, if his son has taken over, if it's anything like Bob, then he'd be good for the sport. Bob tried really, really hard for a lot of different people, including myself. And he helped make Fred Schultz also.
Yeah, and speaking of that, anybody else that sort of really helped you sort of build, you know, what became, I'll call it your brand or whatever?
Yeah, well, to start with Randy Camille, APG, he gave me actually the first push off the cliff. And then Tim Schloss, very funny. We're back there at Jim Lively's tournament, and we're playing. And we would play a still 15 man, and we'd play, and this guy kept coming up to me after the game. He'd go, oh, terrific game, and he'd walk away, you know. And I go, who is this guy, you know? And everybody go, I don't know. And so towards the end of the tournament, he comes up, he goes, oh, you guys played great. That's how Tim talks, you know. And I go, well, right on, I appreciate it, sir. He goes, oh, my name's Tim Schloss. He goes, I'm Tiger Striped Camel. And I go, really? And he goes, yeah. He says, I'd like to sponsor you. Well, I can honestly say, I just talked to Tim a few weeks ago too, I can honestly say that the 5 best people I've ever met in the sport, Tim would have to be number 1. Dan Colby would have to be number 2. Jim Lively would have to be number 3. Bud Orr would have to be number 4. Okay, so, you know, and I probably have a lot of 5s, but those are the, Tim Schloss has just done everything for me. I would go to his big games for him, have a great time, always treated me like a prince, you know. I never asked to be treated that way. He always had time for any of the kids. He wasn't one of them guys that was too good to talk to you because you weren't as great as he was, you know. And that was a problem that I had with a lot of the guys back then. They would think they're so-called pros. And here these kids just want to talk to you for a minute, you know, come on, you know, what's that going to hurt? And they would snub them because they're just too good for these kids, you know. And I could never, ever understand that. And I would, when they would do that, then I would kind of snub them after that. I really would not have a lot of time for that type of person. I tried to grow the sport and wanted to grow the sport, and that was not the way to do it, you know. If you can't take a couple minutes to talk to a kid that idolizes you, then you're not the idol that they think you were.
Yeah, so. That's well said, Fred. Tell me a couple things that most people don't know about you. It could be nothing to do with paintball.
Nothing to do with paintball.
Or it could be paintball, whatever you know.
Wow, that's a hard question. Number 1, love my family. Got a great wife, got great kids, got a great mom. They all put up with me all the time when I traveled. Like I said, my mom was my biggest fan. We went and did a charity thing down in LA with Andy Benes and Howard Johnson, the baseball players and stuff like that. And my mom came down there with me, and all the baseball players signed a ball for her, and she just had the best time in the world, which, you know, it turned me on, you know. And then they sat us down to sign autographs. And first of all the paintball players got in my line, so I signed all their autographs. And matter of fact, I still got Howard Johnson's phone number and Andy Bennis. And so they signed a bunch of stuff for me, and I signed some magazines and stuff for them. And then they sat down and started signing autographs too. Well, then the story came out. I can't remember what magazine the story came out in. Never even mentioned my name. Never even said one thing about me at all. And I'd flown down there on my own dime and played paintball to raise money for, I can't remember what the charity was for, but it was a great turnout. Great turnout. Had a good time. So, but my mom, you know, I was never mentioned, but my mom had the time of her life. And so, stuff like that, just Fred Schultz is cool. Now that I'm out of paintball, it's not so bad. People can laugh, but when I used to travel, I would go into restaurants, people would say after I did the television shows and all of the cover shots and stuff, I couldn't take my family anywhere and sit down and have a dinner with somebody coming up and wanting to talk to me and stuff like that, which didn't bother me, but you know, like my wife and everybody, my food was always cold, they were done sitting there waiting for me. So after I got out, still once in a while, believe it or not, very funny, I had a guy at Costco, a meat cutter at Costco, come up to me last year and go, "Excuse me, are you Fred Schultz?" And I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
So-
One second, sorry. We are now, yeah, gotta change the battery real quick.
That's good, good time chef stuff.
That's really cool. that
Yeah, it
people
blew me
still-
away. I go, no. Hey, my wife and I pulled into the a station in France one time. It was either France or England, and they had a news. You ever see like in a train station they got these big news stands? True story, swear to God. Well, we walk up there, and they had an APG cover of me. They had like 50 covers all in one section. It was about this big.
You put them there yourself.
Yeah, I think my wife did before I landed. But anyhow, we walk up there, my wife goes, "Honey, look at that, there you are." And I looked, and they had they just had a whole section. So paintball was starting to grow over there at that time.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty cool. And then they flew me in, I went to this big game, or amateur game in France with Tom Kay and them. Well, the owner says, "Will you come in early and come and sign autographs?" And I said, "Yeah, I will." So I got this little Peugeot, and I'm driving there. I got my daughter with me, and we get on this interstate where there is absolutely no exits for 90 miles. So anyhow, we're trying to get to the field, and I was asking directions. Obviously, I don't speak French, they didn't speak English, or they just hated us, I don't know. So anyhow, so we end up 90 miles away, and we come back 90 miles, and then finally, we find a guy that speaks English, and he's drunk, but he knew where to get us to. So we finally get out to the field, and the guy's name that owned the field was Stegman or Slegman or something like that. And he goes, "God, Fred," he goes, "we had 100 kids out here waiting to talk to you and get your autograph, you know." And I go, "I'm really sorry." I said, "I got lost on the interstate," yada, yada, yada. So anyhow, my daughter and I are driving back to the motel, and my daughter goes, "God, that's a lot of people, Dad." And I go, "Sweetie," I says, "he's just typing it." I says, "There wasn't that many guys out there." And the next day when we went out there, he wasn't hyping it. These kids all came swooping up, and I got it on tape. After the tournament, they gave a team called the Toons. The oldest kid on the Toons was 12 years old. And anyhow, they got the sportsmanship award. And the kid got the award, and then me and Tom Kay are sitting out there, and they asked the kid, they go, "Well, if you could be anything, what would you want to be?" And he goes, "I would want to be exactly like Fred Schultz." And he almost brought me to tears. And I got Tom Kay, he's out there hugging me and stuff like that. So it's times like that I remember, not to blow my horn, because see, that's why I hate telling the stories like that, because it sounds like I'm trying to blow my horn, but it's impacts that it made on me, that another person made on me, and whatever I made on them is fine, but they touched me huge, period. And let me add real quick, just like you being here, okay? Now you could have blew me off. There's no problem. I'm not a big sponsor. I'm not a big tournament thrower, nothing like that. I'm just Fred. But yet you thought enough of me to come to add me to your tape, to your story of paintball. And it's things like that that it just touches me. You know, I can't even put it into words. It makes me feel extremely good and wanted. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for that.
You are very welcome.
So-
Thank you for doing it. Last question, though, for me anyway. This is a hard question, and if you don't want to answer it, don't answer it. I totally understand. But I've been asked, probably 100 times over the last 20 years, like, why did Fred Schultz leave?
Yeah, a few things. My wife didn't want to travel with me anymore because I was just gone so much, and she loved it to start it. She liked all the limos and hotels and yada, yada, yada. But it just started to grow on her. And I was with Brass Eagle, and my contract was running up with Brass Eagle. And I had other offers from other companies, but then everybody wanted to lock me in for years. And I was just getting sick of all the political stuff that was starting to happen at that time. For me, paintball went from being just an absolute riot of fun to a business. I go back to the big games. Why did I love the big games? It's because they were fun, you know. I went there, people didn't expect nothing but to go there and have a good time. Tournaments, I was in a glass house no matter what I did, where I went. It was just, somebody was always watching me to just, if I did anything bad, they would just jump all over it. You can do a million things good and nobody cares, but you do one thing bad and they will jump on that forever. And I just got kind of burnt out on that. So I was going to go do a big game, and I've got a tractor, and I rolled my tractor over, and I kind of screwed up my ribs and my leg a little bit. So I said, well, I'm going to have to take some time off. I was supposed to go to Nikki's big game, and I just couldn't go. So anyhow, so I took some time off for that, and then I thought, well, maybe I'll get back into it after a while. And then I was in a car accident. I got hit in the back, and it screwed up my neck pretty good. And so I just decided that I just didn't want to get back into the politic part. The physical part I could probably go play at, even an old guy. Obviously I'm not fast anymore, but the Turtles still could win, you know. And so I would still probably go out and play with the right people. I would go do that. I had I don't know if you've heard of Thomas Kincaid, the painter of light.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, he was a friend of mine, and his brother, which is a good friend of mine too, which has kind of helped. His wife had sold the company. She still has a partial thing in it. But anyhow, make a long story short, his brother wanted to do a bunch of stuff with me, and I don't know if you've heard of the Solomons down in L.A. Big producers, all kinds of magazines and stuff like that. They brought me down to L.A. and they talked to me, and Patrick, that's Tom Kincaid's brother, Patrick Kincaid. They brought me down there and they go, oh, we want to do a video with you, and we want to do this and that stuff with you. And I told him, I said, well, you know, let me think on it. And I says, if I do this, I says, I really don't want to do a lot of the traveling portion of it anymore. I kind of like to just hang around, and you guys could do it all with cameras. And he goes, well, he says, we'd like to do that, but he says, we would also like you to travel. He says, because we'll be sticking a lot of money into this. And I said, and see, I can appreciate that. He says, business is business. But I said, I want you to appreciate my side of this, that I'm kind of off the hook right now and out of the limelight. And I won't say that it's super enjoyable, but I can honestly say that I'm enjoying it. I can go places, people don't recognize me, you know. You know, I can go out and I can kick a can and nobody's going to go, whoa, why did Fred Schultz kick that can, you know. It's just a lot of good things that happened when I finally got out of it. Now, would I be interested in helping anybody I could now make the sport, bring it back to what it was? Because a sport that does not keep growing itself with new people is eventually just going to be nothing, because it's just going to be the same amount of people doing the same thing over and over and over again. So, like yours, you know, I hope this makes it to every network, and everything that you try to put it on, I hope it gets there for the sport of paintball.
Thank you so much. Before you go, I want to take a quick picture with my phone, if you don't mind.
I want a picture.
John, do you want a picture with Fred?
I would love to. Yes, I would
Here,
love that.
Let me give me your phone.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna walk him out back and get the stuff.
No,
Okay,
hold on, let me get a
You're
picture
hooked up
with
with
John
your-
and Fred.
Yeah,
I would love that. Thank
I
you.
want a picture with John.
Okay. I think you got it set on video.
Do I?
Yeah.
I don't know how to operate my stuff.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Photo. Let's see, let's get a good,
Thanks for doing it, buddy.
My pleasure.
ready, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Out, baby. Make it.
Got a good one?
One more.
Yeah, I take as many pictures and one of them's gonna
Beautiful.
work.
Yeah, take a bunch.
I'll
Snap
take
a
it.
bunch.
I'll treasure this one.
That's a good one.
I'll
Same here,
treasure
Fred.
this one.
Ready? 1, 2.
Release it into the future, right? Capturing the moment.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Let me grab some of the stuff here. Go ahead and
Beautiful.
sit down.
Beautiful.
Give me a hand, Kiko.